So here's an example of, like, say this was the piece of paper and I just sprayed all around it. There you go, there's your pattern. Cut it out, which I've already done. Right there, pretty gnarly looking. But that's the outside. And I just made it to where it's pretty close to the edge so it'd be easier. I actually did this with an angle grinder with a cutting disc on it. Now, what I did to my piece of metal is I etch primed the back of it to protect against the corrosion. You can use a weld through primer if you want, but all I had was an etch primer. What I did is we took the paint off of the edge, that way we can get a nice weld, and I left all this paint right here for corrosion protection as well. There's no need to grind that off. Test fit. It sits a little bit lower than the handle here, so it'll be good. What I did on the back side of the door is I ground down a little spot there. That way I get a good ground for welding. Also make sure that your battery is disconnected and you're covering your window. Alright, now for the welder's setup, you can go to your chart here, and we've determined that we're going to be welding 18 gauge. So I'm running the 75% argon, 25% CO2. Go over here. We're going to be running 230. So we'll come over here, set that at 2, that at 30. Now this is a starting point. If it's not welding correctly, you can always mess with your speed, your wire speed a little bit. But we're going to start right there and see what happens. Okay, now that we're ready to go, we got our corrosion protection there. We left the paint. We're going to set this up here. And then we're going to do our first welds. Now, we're not gonna run a bead. This is really important, not to run a bead, because you're going to heat this panel up so hot that it's going to warp and it's going to cause you a ridiculous amount of body work. So what we're going to do is we're just going to spot weld certain areas, and we're going to do one here and then one over here and then one over here. So throughout the day you can just come in, do some spots. We're going to kick on the welder right now. Make sure you got it centered up. Okay, now we're going to move all the way to the other end. See, I'm just kind of jumping around different spots. Oh, we're going to let it cool for a little bit, come back. We're going to do some more. Alright, so if you're doing a few doors, you know, like you got 4 doors you're doing, or you got 2 you're doing, you could probably just skip around throughout all of them, you know, doing a few spot welds, then going to the next one, doing a few spot welds on the other door. That way you're keeping the heat down. By the time you're done, you'll have all the spot welds completely touching each other, and then you'll grind that down with the die grinder, also trying to keep the heat down with that too.